Hello everybody and welcome to Ascari at Home. Today we're happy to present to you not your average mushroom risotto. Normally at the Ascari Hospitality Group, we are welcoming you into our restaurants for an amazing experience of food and wine and fun. Today, given what's going on in the world, we're very excited for you to be welcoming us into your home. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look in our box and see what's all there. We've provided all the beautiful ingredients ready for you to make your mushroom risotto at home. We have here first our package of all the dried mushrooms, the soy sauce, the peppercorn, the tarragon. This is for your mushroom stock. In the box, you also have olive oil, which we'll be using for cooking and for finishing. We have a little piece of Parmigiano Reggiano. We have some fresh hen of the woods mushrooms. These are also called maitake mushrooms. These are cultivated in Ontario. We have truffle paste for finishing. We have some tarragon oil for finishing. We have some cheesecloth for making the stock here for the risotto. And then, of course, we have the rice, the most important part. So we're going to move our box out of the way, and we're just going to open up the packages and get ready to cook. So I think we should just lay the ingredients out here on a plate very quickly. So you have everything, and you'll see that, these mushrooms, we've dried them out a little bit so they don't have quite as much moisture. And the onion, you're going to, I can smell that beautiful mushroom when I open that package. It's great. The onion, we're going to take half for the stock and half for the actual risotto. We're just going to cut that in half quickly there. These things we're going to set aside because we'll keep those in the package. We'll open up the cheese so that it's ready for you to grate into your risotto at the end of the process. You should also have a couple tablespoons of butter available from your home. That was one of the things. The first part of making your risotto is making your stock. So you can't make an exceptional risotto using store-bought stock. You got to make your own stock. It's where the flavor comes from. It all gets absorbed into the rice. So the first thing we're going to do is make the stock. So we're going to saute a little bit of onion very quickly in olive oil. So we're going to portion a few tablespoons of olive oil. You probably won't need all this olive oil for the recipe. You'll be able to keep some at home afterwards. So we're going to put a little bit of olive oil in the pot. And we're going to turn on our burner so that gets hot. And then I'm going to very thinly slice lengthwise the onion, so you can see here. And don't worry about getting this just right because this is just going to go in the stock. It's going to be strained off after anyway. We'll get this into the pot. And we have our trusty wooden spoon here to make sure that everything gets moved around quickly. Just going to make those soft and translucent. So it's really important to extract the sweetness of the onion. We don't want to brown it. We're just getting the sweetness out for the stock. You're going to add a pinch of salt right now because adding salt to sauteing onions draws out the moisture and allows it to cook without browning. I'm going to turn this up a little bit. All right, and then that's going like that. And then you have your dried mushrooms here. You're just going to open this package up, empty it into there. The soy sauce, we'll keep it for later. That's at the end of the stock. We're going to season that. Okay, I can hear my onions going now. Also, while this is going, I'm just going to dice my onion for my risotto so it's ready for later. And this you can, I like it really, really small. You can make it a little bit bigger if you like it chunkier. The key to this, though, is that your onion for the risotto that you cook after needs to be very soft. You don't want it to be part of the texture of the risotto. So I'm going to take this apart, do a nice little fine chop here for after. Oh, this is getting a little hot. We'll turn it down. That's good. So you see your onions are softening. That's great. You'll probably put a little less oil than I put. Maybe I put a little bit too much oil. It's not going to hurt anything in the end, but you really just need to soften this up. The reason risotto people find it challenging to make is it's just not one of those dishes that you can leave the stove. You really got to be at the stove, paying attention, stirring constantly, and making sure that everything's going just right. You really don't want to walk away, open a glass of wine, and come back to it later. That's not risotto. You'll never get the result you want in that. It's something you pay attention to, you love it, you stir it. You really got to show the care it requires, but the result is amazing when it's all said and done. I like how soft these onions are, so I'm going to add my dried ingredients to my stock. Okay, in there we have some peppercorn, we have some tarragon, we have some dried shiitake, as well as dried porcini mushrooms. So the porcini mushroom is the king of mushrooms, and that is going to impart an immense amount of flavor. Oh my God. You really got to get your head right in that steam and smell it. It's awesome. It's just, the porcini mushroom is an aroma like no other in the world. And porcinis are great for drying because they really still hold all of their beautiful flavor and umami. Basically what we're doing when we're making this mushroom stock is we're making a mushroom tea. We're just going to really gently saute these. And now I'm going to add the water because I don't want to cook these dried mushrooms like this in the oil. I just want to get them a little toasty. And we're making a tea. So now we're going to add our water. 6 cups of water, or 1.5 liters. That should be plenty once we get it strained to make our risotto. And now that we're going to crank this up, make sure you're at very high heat so that you bring this up to a boil really quickly. While this is coming to a boil, and when we do that, we don't want it to cook long. We just want to simmer for a few minutes, and then we're going to set it to the side to steep for a little bit. While we do that, we can cook our hen of the woods mushrooms. So in your fry pan, you're going to turn it on to medium-high heat. We're going to, again, add some of our olive oil. We're going to have a little bit of salt, pepper, and butter at the ready for cooking the mushrooms. And you want a plate with some paper towel ready to remove your mushrooms from the pan, okay? So we've provided 4 decent, beautiful chunks of hen of the woods mushrooms. These cook fairly quickly, even though they look big. They have a lot of little bits. What we really want to achieve here is crispy, brown, beautiful caramelization without drying it out too much, right? So we're going to get the oil hot. You see I have a good amount of oil in. Mushrooms are like sponges. They really absorb the fat. Don't be afraid to put a decent amount of oil in the pan. If you don't put enough, you're kind of just going to like toast the mushroom. We're going to really fry it, okay? And we're going to add our mushroom. When you add your mushrooms to the pan, it should sound really good. So do a little test. I can hear it. There we go. You can see the sizzle. I can hear it. It's getting nice and hot. Perfect. And you're going to get a nice golden brown on each side. The key with cooking mushrooms, you do not add salt until the end. If you add salt now, all the moisture is going to come out and you're going to steam your mushrooms. It's really important when you saute mushrooms that you only add salt at the end when you're adding your butter. So the mushrooms are going to dehydrate in the pan. They're going to release all their liquid that needs to fry out. When you add your butter and you add your salt, the butter gets reabsorbed into the mushroom and it seasons the mushroom from the inside out. That's how you get beautiful sauteed mushrooms. So you're going to see now we're going to get golden brown. Our stock is slowly coming up to a boil. That's great. There's a couple of these things you can do ahead. You don't have to do it all like front to back. If you want to make your stock the day before or make it like, earlier in the day, that's okay too. You can also saute your mushrooms an hour or so before as well. That's not a bad idea. Just have them room temperature off to the side so that you're kind of ready and kind of set when you're ready to start your risotto. Okay, I'm going to take a look here. See, we're starting to get some golden brown color, but we're not there yet. We're going to leave it a little bit longer. Don't be afraid to push it down. Let's see here. I think, yeah, we're starting to get some color. I'm going to flip it over. Look at that beautiful golden brown. They don't take that long to cook. Okay, so now that we're all just about cooked, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the butter. So we're going to take about half the butter we need for this dish, and we're going to add it in 2 cubes to the pan. And don't forget to reserve some of that butter for finishing your risotto afterwards. Okay? And now that I have the butter in there, what I like to do is grab a spoon, and we're going to baste the mushrooms. Now that we have this beautiful foaming butter here and the olive oil, we're going to add our salt. We're going to add a little bit of black pepper. And we're going to baste. And you're just spreading all that beautiful seasoning all around the mushrooms, letting them absorb. You can flip them over again and maybe give another sprinkle of salt. Look at that. They are beautiful. They're glistening. And how I know they're cooked is You can tell just by looking, they start to get a little supple, a little soft. They're no longer stiff, you know, they're a little malleable. Okay, this one I'm going to leave it a little longer. These ones I'm going to take out. I believe they're cooked. Done. Leave that out just a touch longer. And don't forget to take all these little beautiful bits out. If some bits fall off the mushroom, don't leave those in the pan. Those are gorgeous. Look at that. Okay, so this comes out. And as you guys can see, our stock is going. So I'm going to turn the heat down. And we're just going to let this simmer very gently for just 2 to 3 minutes. Once it's simmered, you can turn it off. You can cover it. I'm just going to take a plate here. And I'm going to cover it. And we're going to let it steep. We're making our tea. That's really important to let that steep for a bit. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start our sofrito. So sofrito in Italian is basically the flavor base of cooking. If you're making a bolognese sauce, your sofrito is carrot, celery, onion. If you're making a risotto, your sofrito is just onion. So we're going to, again, add a little bit of olive oil. Some people add butter and olive oil to start the risotto. I don't like to do that. I find if you make a mistake and go a little too hot, you can burn your butter and really really affect the flavor of your risotto. So now our oil is getting hot for our sofrito. So there's 4 stages to cooking the risotto. The first is your sofrito. The second is toasting the rice. So you'll see that we're going to add the rice into the risotto, the sofrito afterwards. And then it's the slow addition of stock. And then it's the finishing with cheese and butter. So it's really important that you don't make a risotto with crunchy onions. Onions need to be soft, and what you're doing is you're adding sweetness and you're adding a base layer of flavor to the risotto when you are making your sofrito. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Again, I'm going to add some salt because I want to draw the moisture out of the onion because I don't want them to brown. Okay, and this is the first layer of seasoning for your risotto as well. Okay, we're going to give it a little stir. I'm going to turn it down a little bit because I just want to, what we call sweat the onions. I want to sweat them. I don't want to fry them. Okay, I want to make them soft and clear. I don't want to make them brown and dark. There we go. That's beautiful action. If you can see in the pan, that small sizzle is great. Okay, now that our mushroom stock has been steeping, I'm going to bring over our colander over another pot. We're going to unfold our cheesecloth and we're going to strain our mushroom stock. The reason for the cheesecloth is you will have like little bits of dried mushroom that you don't really want in your risotto. I just want to make sure I get everything out. If you just put it through the fine mesh strainer, that's fine too. But this is not your average risotto. This is your above average risotto. So we're going to make sure it's all perfect. So we're going to strain this beautiful mushroom stock through here. And then we're going to do our final seasoning on the stock, which is adding in the soy sauce. Now, you may say, why are we adding soy sauce to an Italian risotto? Well, I truly believe that the best way to season mushrooms is with soy sauce. And that may be from my time in Japan, but to be honest, I just think that soy sauce has so much beautiful umami and you're reinforcing the umami in the mushroom. You really want to squeeze this out. So I'm going to grab some paper towel. You can grab like another tea towel. I just want to squeeze out and get all the flavor out of this. A little bit hot, but if you use a tea towel, it'll work just fine. Okay, we're just going to discard this. Okay, we'll get rid of our colander. And as you can see, I'm keeping an eye on my onions. I'm not letting them go brown at all. They're sizzling nicely. They're getting soft. That's exactly the right amount of heat I want. They're going along nicely. And now we've got our beautiful stock. You can see the color. It's gorgeous. There's a little bit of olive oil on there from the fry of the onions. That's the sweat of the onions. That's totally fine too. Not a problem. We're gonna go ahead and add the soy sauce now. And we've measured it out, so this is exactly the right amount of soy sauce that you need for about 1 liter and a bit of water. That's of stock. That's fine. We're gonna taste the seasoning now, and we're going to adjust. So I'm gonna take a spoon. We're gonna stir it. If you have a little soy sauce at home, you want to add more if you like it a little more. But this should just taste like a really nicely seasoned kind of mushroom soup. And it's good. It's really good. I'm going to add a little pinch of salt, but it's really good. And I'll tell you that flavor is just exactly right for this kind of mushroom risotto. So now that we have our stock on, our mushrooms going, we're going to turn this back on, the mushroom stock, because we want it to be simmering. You can never add a cold liquid to your risotto. What it does, this shocks the outside grain of the rice and it starts to flake off, and it doesn't allow you to create the creamy texture you need. So even one mistake people make is when they make risotto and they deglaze with wine, which we're not using wine today. You could add a little white wine before we add the mushroom stock if you want. If you have a glass going at home, feel free to do that. But you should not add cold wine to your risotto. It should always be at least room temperature, ideally hot, right? So we have a ladle. We're going to get our ladle ready for our moisture addition. We've got our sofrito going. And you know what? It's almost there, but I don't want to rush it. I want to make sure everyone understands you cannot rush this part. You have to develop the flavor of the onions. You have to soften them and make sure that they're like just about clear and translucent. Only then are you ready to add your rice and start this process. And then make sure that you've opened your cheese so it's ready to grate because things will kind of go quickly, right? So I'm going to taste the onion. I'm going to make sure, and I encourage you to do the same at home. Take a little bit of onion out of the pan. Perfectly soft, no crunch. We're ready to go. Amazing. So here we go. We have our rice. We're going to open the backpack. Oh, make sure I get it all open here. There we go. Oh, you can hear the vac release, and we're going to pour it right in. And now I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit because I want to toast the kernels of the rice. I want them, the first cook I want is to be with the oil, with the olive oil. I want that olive oil into the rice kernel to flavor it. I want it to absorb it all. I want it to toast. So if we listen, we'll begin to hear. You should not add any stock until you start to hear your rice start to pop and crack, kind of like Rice Krispie, like pop, snap, crackle, pop a little bit. Especially when you move it around. There it is. Okay, you might not pick it up on the mic, but definitely I can hear it here. You start to hear a little snap, crackle, pop, sizzle. I'll turn it up a little bit. And then we're going to slowly, now the reason why we add our liquid slowly to rice is because rice has 2 layers of starch. Risotto rice in particular. Risotto kernels are a polished rice. So we're going to add, I'd say at the beginning, there we go, nice and hot. That's good. We're going to start with 3 or 4 ladles, and we're going to get it going. And then afterwards, we're only going to add as much liquid as the risotto needs. So risotto rice is a kind of, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. You don't want it to be rumbling boil. You just want it to be a nice slow simmer. Risotto rice is a polished grain of rice. So it doesn't come to you like natural from the field after taking off the husk. The reason they do that is because they're bringing it down to the rice kernel has 2 layers, an outside and inside. The outside is what's going to give you the creaminess of the risotto. Some people add like whipped cream in the risotto at the end. I don't know. I find it's a kind of cheating. There's a word for it in Italian. It's called mantecato. It really doesn't do justice. If you're using an amazing quality rice like we provided you, you should be able to develop the starch and creaminess and texture of the rice without adding whipped cream or heavy cream. What you're doing is developing the creaminess of the outside layer of the starch while cooking the inside kernel of the rice at the same time. And if you do it right at the right speed, at the end, the inside kernel will be cooked, the outside will be creamy. A lot of people talk about bringing their risotto to like cooking it al dente. They don't like it overcooked. I agree. I don't like overcooked risotto either, but it should not be al dente in the sense of pasta. Rice should never get stuck in your teeth. If your rice is getting stuck in your teeth, it's not cooked enough. Okay, so you see already quickly we're down to very little liquid. As your liquid evaporates and gets absorbed, we're going to add more. Okay, so now's the time to turn your heat down to low, because what you don't want to do, you don't want to evaporate the liquid without it being absorbed in the rice. The idea here is the rice is absorbing all of this beautiful flavor and cooking properly. If you're just have this on a rumbling boil, and all you're doing is evaporating your stock. You're not allowing it to incorporate into the rice. Now we're talking. So it's starting to go. This process takes 10, 12 minutes, I would say, maybe more, depending on the rice, depending on the liquid, But stirring is important because as it cooks, you want to rub off the starch, develop the starch into your risotto. So every few minutes, you got to give it a good stir. I strongly recommend that you use stainless steel pot for this, not aluminum, and that you use like a wooden or rubber spatula, not a metal spoon. The reason for that is if you have an aluminum pot, and aluminum is a softer metal and it's also reactive, and if you're scraping with a metal spoon on an aluminum pot, you're going to impart that aluminum flavor into your whatever you're cooking. Yeah, so it's really important that you use a stainless steel pot, or like an enameled pot works great, like a Le Creuset kind of pot. And you want a non-reactive pot basically, and a wooden or hard rubber spatula works great. So see, this is evaporating. We're going to add a next addition very shortly. So now you see our rice kernels are getting bigger. You see they're starting to absorb. It's starting to kind of look like one. We're not there yet, but we're going to add another liquid. We're pretty sure that by the time the rice is cooked, you'll be at the end of your liquid. I like adding like this is a 4-ounce ladle. 8 ounces, like 1 cup of liquid at a time is, I think, the right amount for this. And you might need to adjust your heat if you're on a flame, kind of really, really low simmer. If you're on an electric stove like I am, or an induction, just slowly adjust. Make sure that things are bubbling and going without rumbling. And you see that bubbling. You can see even the liquid in the pan is starting to get starchy. That's good. That's good. Then you're stirring it enough when that liquid's starting to get starchy. And you're only adding 4 to 8 ounces of liquid at a time. If you add too much, you're just going to dilute all that. You're not going to be able to develop that starch. So as we're going, you see, this is not something that happens quickly. We're getting there. But it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes dedication to make a risotto like this. We're probably about 5 minutes away now. This is probably where you can refill your glass of wine, or you can, take a look out the window and see what's going on outside. If you're lucky enough to have a window in your kitchen, and see what the neighbors' kids are doing in the backyard. But never be too far away from your stove, as you really want to make sure you're here to stir, to love this, and make sure it's coming together beautifully. And we're getting there. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a seasoning test, because when you're cooking, you should always be testing for seasoning as you go throughout the process. So even though this rice isn't cooked, I'm going to take a little bit. I'm going to see how it tastes. So I'd say the rice is about 75% cooked. The seasoning's good. I'm going to add a touch more salt right now, but be careful, because don't forget, at the end, you're finishing with cheese and butter. Now, the butter I have is unsalted, but in case the butter you have at home is salted, keep that in mind. And the Parmigiano Reggiano cheese has a decent amount of salt, so you don't want to bring this to perfect at the point seasoning and then add the Parmigiano cheese and it becomes too salty. So I think we're right there. We've got the right amount of seasoning in our stock. We've got the right amount of seasoning in our sofrito. And now I'm just making sure we're at a good point now, tasting it a couple times before we get to the end, so that I know that when I add the cheese, we're in good shape. We also here have a black truffle paste. This truffle paste we provided for you, unlike some truffle pastes you buy at the store, this one is just mushrooms and truffles. And a little bit of olive oil. It doesn't have any other ingredients, any other fillers. Some of them have anchovy, some of them different ingredients. This one is just mushrooms, truffle, and oil. It's going to add an elegance, and it's going to elevate the dish when we fold this in at the end. This is going to go in right after the cheese. And I realized after, in my instruction package that you have in front of you, we may have omitted when to add the truffle paste. We've edited it now, but in case you got an earlier version in your package, just so you know, the mushroom paste goes in right before we grate the cheese. And then the tarragon oil is going to go on top on the dish right afterwards, okay? So I think we're getting really close here. I'm going to taste the rice again, and don't be scared to just continue to taste now and again. So instead of adding 2 ladles this time, I'm just going to add 1 ladle of liquid. At the end, it's very important that you don't go too crazy, and I'm going to turn this stock off because I don't want that to boil down to nothing. And I think now I've got enough liquid in the pot to get us to the finish line. Risotto is all about practice. It's all about doing it over and over. What we're providing to you today are the tools to make a great risotto. The first time you do it, if it's amazing, that's awesome. I'm glad. Chances are you're going to have to do this a few times, understand the rhythm, understand the speed at which things should be cooking. It becomes intuitive after a while, but only after practice. There's no such thing as a natural cook. Good cooks are people who've done something over and over and over again. It's all about repetition. That's why in our trade, apprenticeship is so important to the development of skills and the development of great chefs and great cooks. It's following the lead of people who've been doing it for years, learning from their experience, and then gaining your own experience as well by just doing it over and over and over again and understanding how food behaves, how temperature affects product, and then really understanding how to layer seasoning. So we've done a number of things in this dish here to layer seasoning. We've started a sofrito, we've added salt. We've seasoned our mushroom stock and basically made a beautiful mushroom tea from dried mushrooms and seasoned that with some soy sauce. We've added a little bit of salt as we go with the risotto. And then at the end, we're adding a whole bunch of other umami. We have our sauteed roasted mushrooms. We have our Parmigiano cheese full of umami. We have our truffle face full of umami. This dish is going to be so rich and so luxurious that again, it's not average. That's the point. It's not just mushrooms and onions and salt and cheese and butter. That is not how great restaurants make great dishes. They always layer flavor, and they always add a few elements that you may not think of to do at home. We are just about there. As soon as I think I've evaporated enough of this liquid, I'm going to turn off the heat, and we're going to finish our risotto. So it's really important that when you add your cheese and your butter, that the heat is off. You don't want to split the butter and like cook the cheese. You want the cheese just to be there to finish the flavor and coat the kernels a little bit. As you see here in the risotto, if you look in the pan, it's moving kind of as one unit. You can kind of see that. Also, you still see the individual grains of rice. That is very important. It's not become like a mash, like a Chinese congee or like a rice pudding. Every individual grain of rice here, you want to be able to feel it and taste it in your mouth. At the same time, getting a creamy texture. Risotto is one of those things. It's both homogeneous and it's heterogeneous. Every rice kernel should have its own identity, but it's all part of one unit, one beautiful thing. Okay, so I'm going to just turn this up quickly, just a little bit to get us to the end. Okay, so you should have enough for 2 beautiful, generous portions of rice, kind of a main course, not really an appetizer size. This is a good amount of rice here. So there we go. We're ready to add the butter. So what I do is I always add my butter first. So I'm going to cube up a couple pieces of the butter here. I'm going to turn off my heat, and I'm going to add the butter. Let's use my hands. And we're going to beat that butter in. Make sure that it melts nicely. I put cold butter because I like it to melt slowly. Okay? I don't want it to melt really quickly and start to split. And now's the time you really got to stir really well. You can see it's starting to look a little creamier, a little velvetier. Again, if you're finishing a dish with butter, it's definitely a dish from northern Italy. It's not a dish from southern Italy. Okay, my butter's melted in nicely. And now we're going to grate our Parmigiano into here. Okay, we're going to grate about 75% of it in because I want to save a little bit to grate right on top of the plate, right? You can use a microplane like I'm using. You can use just like a fine grater on your box grater at home. That's fine too. You don't have to get too fancy with the cheese. It's just so that it melts in nicely and doesn't leave like any chunks or get stringy or anything like that, right? So we may have given you a little extra. You may not need the whole piece. Give you about 30, 40 grams. So now you can see it's getting... So the texture now at the end, I'm going to put a little bit more cheese in there. When you're bringing it to the plate, I like to say it should be falling. Like, it should be able to fall off of the spoon. It shouldn't be so sticky and thick that it doesn't want to leave the pot, but it should fall out gently and with some grace and elegance. It shouldn't just like flow like a porridge onto the plate. And I'll show you what I mean now. Look, that's it. See how beautiful that falls onto your plate? Look at that, right in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring a little bit, I'm going to add the truffle paste to the pan. I'm going to bring a little bit of rice back in to incorporate it. We'll put that back in the pot. There we go. And we'll just stir this in so it gets nice and incorporated, and I'll top each one with a little bit of truffled rice. Oh my God, the smell of that truffle paste is intoxicating. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Okay, wonderful. Okay, and now we're gonna put our mushrooms on the top. 1, 2 pieces each. Gorgeous. And the last thing we're going to do is finish with our tarragon oil. So you can pour it like right out of the package if you want, or you can put it in a little bowl and spoon it out. Just be careful. You might not need all of this. You just want to put a little bit around each plate, right onto the rice, let it fall off the edge. And this is going to add a little bit of beautiful tarragon flavor to every bite. Everybody, there you have it. There is not your average mushroom risotto with hen of the woods mushrooms, Parmigiano Reggiano, and tarragon oil. Thank you for letting us into your home. Ascari is going to be producing a few more meals like this so that everyone can enjoy restaurant quality meals at home. We provide all the ingredients you need to do all the hard work, and at home you're just putting it together. We're so happy to be able to bring this to you today. Enjoy.